Good morning. My name is David Shue, and I'm here today as a 32-year veteran from CAL FIRE. I'm here today with Kazoo from Shearman Builders in California.
Great to be with you.
And we're going to be here talking about how to protect your home from wildfires. There are three primary ways that structures ignite from wildfires: the direct flames themselves, the radiant heat that those flames are putting off, but primarily a way that structures ignite today are because of embers. Those glowing firebrands that are blowing through the air and trying to find combustible material on or near your home to ignite the structure. What we're going to do today is talk about how wire mesh can help protect from embers igniting your structure. The leading researchers and fire authorities today around the country, such as CAL FIRE, IBHS, NFPA Firewise USA, and NIST, are all pointing to the importance of having good quality mesh to protect your home from those embers penetrating into the house. Kazoo is going to show you examples of how to retrofit your home and better protect it from the embers themselves. One of the most effective products on the market today is Wildfire Defense Mesh, which is a product that has been tested effectively to resist flames, radiant heat, and embers from igniting structures. It is in full compliance with California Chapter 7A vents and is the product that we're going to be using today to go ahead and show how you can retrofit structures to reduce ember ignitions.
So today we're going to show you how to install Wildfire Defense Mesh on a foundation vent, a Gable Vent, and a Soffit Vent. All of these are vertical installations, and Wildfire Defense Mesh will protect against flame, ember, and radiant heat in these installations. If you need more information about the installation guide, you can find that on the website wildfiredefensemesh.com. But now let's prep our space. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut away the old mesh that's here. You can see it's all painted over. The reason we're doing that is we want to create maximum airflow. I have just regular tin snips here, and we're just going to go a little bit at a time, clicking it away. This is a stucco wall, so we're not going to be able to do much to smooth it out, but what you can do is we'll do 1 inch of overlap all the way around and put a caulk bead behind it. And that caulk bead will catch any embers that try to get through. All right, let's measure our opening. So our measurement here is 14 by 5.5. Now I'm gonna add 1 inch on the top and 1 inch on the bottom, inch on both sides. So that's gonna leave us with 16 by 7.5. Wildfire Defense Mesh comes in a 7.5 inch roll, which is pretty convenient for this size foundation vent. All right, let's go cut our mesh. I've already taken the length off of a 7.5 inch roll, so I can just go ahead and make my mark here. You know, it's a little tricky to do the cutting and measuring because the mesh itself is black, so a trick you can use is a piece of tape. So I'm making my measurement here. I want 16 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that with my tape. And now I can just follow along the line. You want to cut through along one line to prevent fraying. So you're just following the space between 2 lines of wire. And that's it. Next, I'm going to show you how to bend this. So what I did was I had an extra inch on the top and on the side, all the way around, which gives me a 1/2 inch to bend over. That creates a thicker grip for the screw that's going to go through and attach to the wall. I'm going to cut out a 1/2 inch corner on either side. That's 6 little wires. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm just snipping these corners, 1/2 inch on either side. You can see that. And just to make sure that I'm lining up, I'm using my measuring tool here. And again, I'm going to take my tape as a reference. Just one little trick to make it a little easier. So now we have our 4 corners cut and we're ready to bend. So I'm using this metal folding tool. If you don't have one, you can use a wrench. A regular gripping wrench would do it. You can also use something like this, something that has a hard edge on it. I'll do it from the other side so you can see it. I'm just going to line that up along my cut and bend up from the other side. Okay, so that'll mark it for you, and then you can come through and make it a little bit more stiff just with your fingers. So in this case, we're going to fold this all the way over. Come through and create a nice tight connection there. Okay. And then we're ready to install. Okay, so I've cut a couple different versions of this. So the very simplest thing you can do is just cut that square that we talked about, or the rectangle rather, that covers with an extra inch in every direction. This you could just go ahead and screw through. On this side I would do 3 screws every 3 inches, and then you can probably do every 4 to 6 inches on the longer edges. You really want to have a tight connection between the wall and the mesh. And then because this surface is uneven, I would recommend putting a bead of caulk over it as well. You can just use clear silicone caulk. A second option would be, as we showed you up at our cutting station, you can bend the edges to create a nice frame. This creates just a slightly more aesthetically pleasing option. Again, you're going to do the same thing where you're going to put a silicone bead of caulk to make sure it's completely making contact and there's no room for embers to get in there. And your third option is to do what I've done here, where I've bent the edges in so I can inset my vent. And then this way, when I make my connections, I'm going to go sideways into the side of the wall. Now with all of this, you have to think about what surface you're connecting to. For anything with stucco, make sure to use a masonry bit to pre-drill your holes, the thickness of the shaft of your screw. All right, we're going to go ahead and do that now. So for this, I'm using masonry screws because we're going into masonry. With many of your foundation vents, you'll be able to mount it from the back side. So if you have access to a crawl space or a basement, that's another option for you. That might be a little easier. And there you have it. So today we're going to install our mesh onto this here Gable vent. We're going to attach directly to the metal, which is exposed on this one. Often you'll see with a stucco house like this, the stucco may be over the metal, in which case you want to make sure to use a masonry bit when drilling through that stucco to attach to your metal frame. I'm going to go cut it and we'll come back and put it up. So we've got our mesh already cut and bent, and we're going to install it with metal screws since we're going right into this metal frame. Now I like to use a self-tapping metal screw with a hex head. You can also get pan head screws. These have a nice trim head, which I like. And it's going to pierce the metal on its own. I'm just going to set it up, poking it through the corner here. at any point when you're on the ladder you feel uneasy, take a break, get yourself down. It's not the easiest thing to be drilling over your head on the ladder, so be safe before anything else. And that's that. We've got our screws attached. We have a great level of defense here now, protecting embers and flame, and we're ready to move on to the next one. So we're going to prepare our surface here. The wood is nice and smooth, so we don't have to do anything to that, but we do want to cut away the old mesh. You can see there's a lot of paint on that, and we want to allow maximum airflow for your new vents. So this is a really thin mesh. I might be able to just get it with my knife. In fact, I could practically tear it out with my hands. It's so old. If any of this feels a little out of your reach, you can always call us at shearmanbuilders.com. That's SHEARMAN builders.com. But I'm going to show you how you can do it yourself without having to do any special framing. So this is just a simple top mount. Okay, now that I've got all my old mesh out of there, I'm ready to put in my new mesh. Now, whenever you're dealing with metal, you want to be wearing gloves. It can get very sharp and cut your hands. So you see what I'm doing here. I wouldn't do this with bare hands. And now we'll go ahead and take these hexagon head sheet metal screws. These have a self-tapping tip, which makes it nice and easy. You don't have to pre-drill your holes. And one thing that people often make a mistake with is screwing too much. You just want to screw until you touch the surface. At that point, if you go farther, you're just drilling out the hole where the screw is going. So just screw until you make contact. Do a few more here. All right, last one. And there you have it. Our simple top mount soffit vent. So now that we're done with that, I'm going to show you how to install Wildfire Defense Mesh onto a roof vent. This is a common roof vent that can be found in California. It's an off-ridge vent. And so it's one of the trickier ones to access because it's on top of your roof. You may want to hire a professional. Feel free to reach out to us at shearmanbuilders.com. So what we're going to do first is measure our opening. We've got 19.5 by 3.5, 3.25. And we're going to add 2 inches on either side to make it easy to fasten to the surface. So right here I have the 7.5 inch roll. Now, Wildfire Defense Mesh comes in 7.5 inch, 24 inch, 36 inch, 49 inch, and 60 inch rolls. Depending on what surface you're covering, you'll have to choose the right size for your job. So the nice thing about the packaging that this comes in, it's a sturdy cardboard cylinder that you can repackage in after you've cut and installed your mesh to avoid spooling. It's a great little storage container. And then I'm just going to cut right along the line of the mesh, avoiding any sort of deviations so that we get a nice clean edge to work with. This also prevents any fraying from happening. So let's get this back into its handy storage container. Look at that. Now, we're going to bend in two different directions for our roof vents. On the bottom, we're going to attach through the metal flashing to the roof itself. When you get up on your roof, you'll see the roofing is going to come, the material is going to come right up to these edges here. So when we're fastening on the lower side, we're going to use sheet metal screws that have a rubber gasket on them. Now that's going to create a watertight seal, so there's no worry for water intrusion in your roof. Now to bend this at home, we're going to do, again, our space is 3.5 inches, so with our 7.5 inch roll here, we can just use the whole shape of it and bend it in a bit. So I'm going to do 2 inches on the bottom, 1, 2, 3.5, and 2.5 on the top, or 2 and 10, 2 and 2. So here's my mark. So I'm just using a stiff edge to bend on. Not everybody has metal benders at home. So this is showing you how you could do this yourself. And again, I'm following that line of the weave of the mesh so that I get a nice straight line all the way across. I'm going to go ahead and overfold that a little bit because our angle of our vent is a little overextended. So I'm lining up here, and because this is on your roof, no one sees it, you don't have to worry too much about what it looks like. So I'm just going to come through and snip. At this edge, I guess we'll go this way. And I want to do all my cuts before I start attaching, because as soon as I start attaching, I won't have access to the full form of the mesh. Okay, and I'm going to do 2 more cuts just on these creases here, the same length that I just did. Now these are just regular tin snips. You can get them at any hardware store. Okay. So now we've got our grooves all cut. We can go ahead and pre-bend these. It's going to bend around the side there. This one's going to bend around this side. And by over bending it and then bending it back, you get a nice sharp corner. I'm going to over bend and then bend it back to get that nice sharp corner. I'm going to do the same thing with the full length, and I'm just actually going to use the vent to help me bend it up. Okay. So now you can see we have a nice tight fit here, and all we need is a few sheet metal screws to attach it. So I'm going to start with my corners. And I've given myself enough overlap here that I'm not too worried about the connection points. I have some play. Since we have so much overlap here, it'd be very difficult for an ember to get in between that. Now it's almost good enough the way it is. I'm going to put a few screws going down into what would be the roof on your house. And that does it. So today we've learned how to install Wildfire Defense Mesh on vents, like this one. Installing mesh on vulnerable parts of your home is only one part of protecting your home from wildfire. For more on that, let's go to Dave.
Thank you, Kazoo. And yes, she's absolutely right. A well-tested and effective mesh is critical to help reduce the risk of ember ignitions. But there are other factors that can also help. Number one, we want to look at all the space between 0 and 5 feet away from the structure to make sure there is no combustible material that can ignite and therefore ignite the structure. We also want to make sure that your home itself has as much non-combustible materials around it and is well maintained as possible. We also want to look at any fencing. If you have fencing coming adjacent to your house, you want to make sure that at least 5 feet out from that fence is non-combustible. And again, as we've been talking about here, an effective wire mesh is one of the easiest ways that is 1/16 inch and tested to be able to protect your house from wildfire ignitions. The last thing, of course, is looking at this on a larger scale, looking at your neighborhood, making sure that your neighbors are also participating in these non-combustible factors and improving the likelihood that structures will not ignite once a fire starts burning through your neighborhood.
So that's our installation for DIY guide today. If you need help with installation, if it's a little bit over your head or you want things to be a little bit more manicured, reach out to us at our website, shearmanbuilders.com, and check out wildfiredefensemesh.com for more ideas of how you can protect your home from wildfire.